Media creates Biden fitness crisis. So writes Judd Legum over at popular.info. He's talking about how Robert Hur, the Republican special prosecutor that Merrick Garland appointed to look into Joe Biden, another reason to remove Merrick Garland now. But in any case, Robert Hur is a lawyer, not a doctor. And yet he's opining about the President of the United States' mental acuity. And this is an actual political threat. But what makes it really bad is how the media dealt with it. When Robert Hur's report came out, the media could have said, you know, Robert Hur, there's no there. Joe Biden didn't commit any crimes, and they're not going to prosecute him. And this Republican who did the investigation thinks that he's an old man, but so what? I mean, it could have been dealt with that way. And frankly, I think if it was about Trump, it would have been dealt that way. But because it was about a Democrat, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the three big national newspapers that we have in this country, all went nuts. Judd Legum did an analysis, and he says the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal collectively published 81 articles about Hur's assessment of Biden's memory in the 4 days following the release of Hur's report. 81 articles. The New York Times published 30 stories about Biden's alleged memory issues between February 7 and February 10. The story was covered by 24 reporters, 4 opinion columnists, and the New York Times editorial board. Only one of those 30 stories in the New York Times mentioned a key fact, writes Judd Legum, that Hur is completely unqualified to render a judgment on Biden's mental capacity. The Washington Post featured even more coverage of Biden's memory, writes Judd Legum, in the aftermath of Hur's report. That paper produced 33 articles featuring Hur's opinions about Biden's memory between February 7 and February 10. Just one of the Washington Post's 33 articles noted that Hur's opinions of Biden were baseless, and that piece was written by their health reporter. The Wall Street Journal published 18 articles on Biden's memory during that time period, those 4 days. The Wall Street Journal's opinions pieces were even most caustic, flatly asserting that Hur's report proved that Biden was in cognitive decline and had a failing short-term memory. Quotes from the article. They did not produce any articles in the Wall Street Journal explaining that Hur has no qualification, no medical qualifications to determine whether Biden has a functional memory. I mean, keep in mind, Donald Trump called Viktor Orban the leader of Turkey. He said that he defeated Barack Obama in 2016 when he ran against Hillary Clinton. He has claimed that Obama is his opponent right now and that Obama is actually running the country. He mixed up Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi. Trump's mix, and so, you know, did these three newspapers go after Donald Trump for those failures? No. Judd Legum notes, the tenor of the coverage was markedly different. One of the New York Times articles was a brief recounting of the incident. This is when Trump mixed up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. Was a brief recounting of the incident without any suggestion that it was a political liability for Trump. So Robert Hur says, Biden couldn't remember when his son died, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's the end of, you know, that's Biden. We gotta move on. You know, get him the hell out of here. Trump mixes up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi, and the New York Times, instead of writing 30 articles about it like they did about Biden, they write one article about it, and that article never mentions the fact that this might hurt Trump politically, when that's the entire focus of the 30 articles that they ran about Biden. The other 3 articles briefly noted that Haley was using the mix-up to attack Trump. The Washington Post published only 2 pieces about this mix-up of Haley and Nancy Pelosi. I mean, there's just this huge double standard. We saw this with Comey, the same thing. You know, that if you can provide the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, if you can provide our national media with data to attack a Democrat, the Dean Scream, you know, Gary Hart and monkey business. If you can provide the media with something that can be used to attack a Democrat, they will run with it as long and as hard as they can, because they just love this stuff. If you provide them with stuff that they can use to attack a Republican, they tend to downplay it. And it's been that way for a long time. I remember when Reagan was senile. I mean, a friend of mine, whose name I shouldn't probably disclose because of what I'm about to tell you, but a friend of mine's wife was one of the court reporters in the room with Ronald Reagan when he was deposed in Iran-Contra. And I will remember this till my dying day. I was sitting in their kitchen with Michael and his wife in Los Angeles, and having this conversation about, she had just finished this deposition, like a day or two earlier, and she was just in shock. She was like, over 100 times, Ronald Reagan did not know where he was. He didn't know what day it was. Now this was the 7th year of his presidency. This wasn't after he left office. And it was no secret that, I mean, I'm sure you can still Google it, but did the media go nuts with it? No. They were like, well, Reagan seems to be having some problems remembering things. Yeah.